Dear students, welcome back to the online class on embedded systems. So we'll continue in today's session with the RTOS functions. So as part of RTOS functions, we have discussed about various concepts like, the functions such as the synchronization, task synchronization. And in that process, we discussed about various methods to synchronize such as semaphores, mailboxes, queues, pipes, all these things. And we'll discuss further some more functions of the RTOS in that process, like timers, events, right? All these things, right? So let us timer functions. So timer functions are very much crucial. Why? Because RTOS has to meet the deadlines. RTOS has to meet the deadlines in executing their tasks. So therefore, to implement a task, execute a task, it has to be completed in a given time or a predefined time. That is called, meeting the deadlines. So therefore, by using which feature it is going to meet the deadlines, it is the timers. So timer functions. Therefore, timers are used to measure the elapsed time of the events that are happening in the RTOS. Every process is going to perform some event, or every task is going to perform some event. To perform that event, it has to perform in a given time. So who has to calculate the time? It is the timer used in the RTOS operating system to measure the elapsed time of the events. Say, for example, the kernel has to keep track of different times. The kernel is going to keep track of the different times. A particular task may need to be executed periodically, say 10 milliseconds. A timer is normally used to keep track of this periodic activity. Say, for example, the periodic activity is something like, looking into the interrupt hardware interrupt routine. So continuously a processor is going to look into interrupt, whether any interrupt has there or not, after every 10 milliseconds. Or status of the status registers. After every 10 milliseconds, the microprocessor is going to look into the status registers. That means that particular activity of looking into status registers, of looking into the hardware interrupt pin, is going to be known as a task, a particular task. So a particular task may need to be executed periodically, say every 10 milliseconds time period. A timer is normally used to keep track of such a periodic activity. So timer is really required to perform that activity. So like this, these are all the various requirements where we go for a timer. Say a task may be waiting in a queue for an event to occur. So once an event occurs, then this particular task is going to be in the running state. So until that time, it will be in the queue only, because there is no necessity of task to take birth. So therefore, it will be there in the queue totally. Okay. So for example, transferring data from external memory to the internal RAM. To the internal RAM is the task. So until there is an interrupt from the external memory, right, there should not be any task of transferring data from external memory into the internal RAM of the processor. So that is a task. That means what? A task has to be in the waiting state in the queue for an event to occur. What is the event? Event is coming from the external interrupt. So if the event does not occur at all for a specified interval of time period, it has to take appropriate action. Say for example, event has not at all occurred. Then also it has to take some operation, some action. That is what called meeting deadlines. It should not just be in the infinite loop. So that means after 10 milliseconds, if nothing is come, what the processor has to do? That has to be predefined. So a task may be waiting in a queue for a shared resource. Just now we discussed in the previous session about shared resource. So, it will be waiting in a queue for a shared resource to get accessed. If the resource is not available for a specified time, then also an appropriate action has to be taken. So if the shared resource, if a task could not get a shared resource at all in a given time, then what has to be done? That also has to be predefined. So all that can be done by using timers only. So these operations and so on and so forth, say watchdog timer. So watchdog timer is a timer which is always predefined to look into the various time limitations given to the various tasks to perform in the operating system. So that is also going to be one of the application of the timer functions. So watchdog timer is one more you can include like that. It can have many functionalities. So let us look into the applications of timer functions, practically where the applications are useful directly. So in order to extend the life of a battery, the cordless barcode scanner. So when you go to a shop, you're going to have a barcode scanner. To pay the amount, we're going to give our card to him. He's going to simply scratch the card or scan the card. So for example, if no customer is coming, then the battery should not get wasted in that particular card scanner. So in that process, what that CAD scanner should do, based on the value of timer set, say maybe 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, or maybe 1 minute. After that, the cardless barcode scanner has to be in the deactive mode, right? Has to be in the deactive mode. That means so that it can save the battery life. It can save the battery life of that particular cardless scanner. Otherwise, what happens? The battery is simply being used continuously and the battery is going to get discharged. When the user really comes, when the customer really comes, if the battery is simply drained off, then nothing is going to work in the scanner. Once again, he has to recharge the battery. It takes some time. So therefore, these are all the various backup activities which we can do by using timer applications. Next is the one is in networking. So networking systems with network connections must wait for acknowledgements to data that they send. Now what happens is when a source computer transmits a data in the internet, it has to wait for an acknowledgement from the destination computer. What happens if the data did not received by the sender after a predefined time period? Then sender has to retransmit the data if the acknowledgement does not show up on the line in a given time. So that means this is also done by a timer. Given time means what? That is maintained by a timer. So after, timer is normally used to count the time delays, whereas counter is normally used to count the events based on the clock cycles. So timer is normally used to know the delays. That this is what where we use the timers. That means some time delay will be provided, say maybe some 20 milliseconds. So up to 20 milliseconds, it will wait. After 20 milliseconds, delay is over. Delay time is over. So then what the sender has to do, it has to retransmit the same set of packets, what it has been transmitted before, say 20 milliseconds. So next one is manufacturing systems must wait for a robot arms to move or for motors to come up to the speed. So manufacturing systems should wait until the inertia applied to the motors to move, right? Further also, how much time the motor has to wait of accessing the data from its input devices, input systems, that is predefined time once again. So on and so forth. So that means we normally use this in the manufacturing industry. We use timers in the data communication industry. We use timers in the battery life management. So timer interrupt routines will take care of all the timer operations among various tasks. Okay, these are all the various practical applications. So what are the timer management functions? Function calls known as get time, set time, time delay. So just now we discussed about time delay in the data communications. Okay, just now we discussed about time delay in the time delay in the manufacturing industry. So like that. So set time, setting time for delays. Okay, getting time for doing the operations. So the next is a reset timer. So it should be in a position to reset timer also. So these are all the various timer management functions. The next important concept is going to be an event. Event is nothing but happening of a job is known as an event. Okay, performing of a task is known as an event. So in computing side, we say real time usually. So real time means what? The time measured by a physical clock is called real time. That means in real time, it is with respect to measured time. It's called real time. Is called real time. So measured time is what? Internally is going to have the clock. That clock is going to have timer definitely. So that physical clock movement is what called measured physical clock movement is called a real time. So real time operation generally means execution keeps up keeps up with the pace of the events. So in real time, it keeps up with the pace of the events. So an event is completed in how much time period? That is what important for us in a real time. So a speech or video sample of 1 second. So it's what one of the real-time application. If processed in 1 second or in less time period, we have to check whether the process is completed 1 second or in less than 1 second. The video speech processing is completed in 1 second or less than 1 second is the real time. Okay. So in real-time systems, task execution meets specific deadline. This is what we are continuously speaking here. If any system meets specific deadlines with respect to time, it is called a real-time system. So a task can have an event register in which bits correspond to different events. So usually a task is normally going to consist of sequence of events to be performed. Say, imagine that there is a task of booting the computer. So as and when you switch on the computer button, we normally going to expect a task known as booting to take place. Now, in order to make the booting task to take place, internally it has to implement or execute so many events. Internally, so many events should happen to perform the operation known as booting. So booting is a task. So a task known as booting can have event register in which the bits correspond to different events. So different events means what? Booting means what? As and when you switch on, it has to first of all check with the supply how much it is coming, whether supply is really sufficient to turn on the device or not. First task is that. So that means event is what? Checking the battery power is first event. Second thing is what? It has to check about the software which is there in the BIOS software, and that has to brought into the RAM memory. So that means that is called BIOS software has to be implemented. So to implement the BIOS software, it has to implement read-write operations. So all that process is done. After that, it has to check. Next event is what? Checking the keyboard. Next event is what? Checking the mouse connection. Next event is what? Checking of the ports connected to it, like serial port, communication ports, internet port. So checking of network interface card. So all these things are simply being performed. Each and every event is performed in the task of booting. So once after everything is fine, then we say the task of booting got completed and your system will be enabled to accept input from the user. So that is what called after booting process, your system will be ready to work. So each of the bits in the event register is nothing but an event flag. So we can just treat the bits in the event register going to be called as event flags. So once after an event is being completed, event flag is going to get set. Well, that is how it is normally going to be done there. So therefore, event register management functions are going to be what now? Create an event register, delete event register, query event register, set an event flag, clear an event flags. Next one is memory management. So while we deal with the real-time operating systems tasks, we need to have memory. So compulsorily memory data has to be stored. Data and program has to be stored in memory, and this data and memory, the data and instructions has to be accessed very effectively because it has to meet deadlines. So therefore, memory organization and utilization is a very important task. So memory management is an important task. In addition to the kernel objects, memory management is an important service provided by the kernel itself. See, in real time, everything has to be done very fast because it has to meet deadlines. So kernel only is going to perform these many operations. Task level, kernel is going to manage. Memory management, kernel is going to manage. Timer functions, kernel is going to manage. So all these are managed by the kernel itself. That means OS level itself. So API, that is application program interface, provides following function calls to manage memory. So to manage memory, the OS is going to provide so many functionalities like create a memory block, get data from the memory block, post data into the memory block, query a memory block, free the memory block. So these are all the various functions. Now, so the functions are going to be quite normal and quite direct functions, because they are used for the end user. So end user want to create memory is going to use a create memory block function. End user want to get some data from the memory after created, after stored data into it. If you want to write some data into it, use the post data into the memory. You want to give a query to the memory, that means you want to get the data from the memory based on its query. That's called SQL query. So you can just put a query and get the data from the database, like Oracle database or Visual Based database, whatever the database for that matter. So our internet cloud, you can get the data. So free the memory block. After utilization of the memory, you want to clear the memory, so you can free the memory. Using all these functions, we can just have. Other one is going to be the interrupt service routines. Now, what is basically interrupt in a more primitive level? Interrupt is basically a hardware mechanism used to inform the CPU that an asynchronous event has occurred. So an interrupt is a hardware driven mechanism used to inform the CPU that an asynchronous event has occurred. Asynchronous means what? It is not time bound data. That means it is totally a real-time operation. In real time, we really don't know exactly when an event is going to happen. When the event happens, we have to execute it. That is how the situation is. So that is what interrupt handling. Interrupt is totally an asynchronous signal from the external device. So when CPU recognizes an interrupt, it saves its context. What is going to happen in interrupt? Something like calling a function. So calling a function, when you call a function, what happens? Similarly, when interrupt is addressed by a CPU, what happens? Just now we discussed, CPU or a processor want to periodically look into the external interrupt. So if it finds that interrupt is there, interrupt has been taken place, then the CPU after recognizing interrupt, it saves its context, that is, it saves its task data in the stack register and jumps to the subroutine known as interrupt service subroutine. Now there is a predefined interrupt service subroutine. That means if an interrupt has come from external memory asking to transfer data from its memory location to the internal memory of the processor. Now there is a predefined set of instructions to perform the task, which is stored in the vectored interrupts known as interrupt service routine memory location. The control simply goes to that memory location. So upon completion of that ISR, interrupt service routine, the program should return to where? In general, if nothing is there, it will come to the program what it has called. Now there in a real-time operating system, apart from the two other operations are also going to get performed because of preemption concept. So therefore the background returns to the background in the case of foreground background systems. So it returns to the background system in case it is called from the foreground system. That is what you know, it's something like front panel, back end, front end. So it comes to the back end when the function is called from the front end. Then interrupted task in case of non-preemptive kernel. Who has interrupted this particular call? The control goes to that interrupted call in the case of non-preemptive kernels. There are preemptive kernels, that means highest priority task that is ready to run in case of preemptive kernel. Now, this is the crucial point here in the case of the RTOS applications. RTOS is predefined. RTOS is predefined. Now, since the time of execution of a particular task has not reached, then the processor has went into interrupt service routine, performed it. Now, by the time when it returns back, there is some high priority task to be taken by the processor to implement. So in that case, what happens is the control simply comes to the highest priority task that is ready to be executed, ready to run in case of preemptive kernel task. This is the difference here. You don't come back to its call location. It has to go to the highest priority task. After it completes, then the control comes back to the location where it has called. Sometimes it need not actually, it won't come there. Okay, in the case of this particular program service routine, it need not come to the location where it has started. So because it is the job is something like highest priority has to be addressed, and the control will be going one after the other based on the event register contents. So each operating system needs to disable interrupts from time to time to execute critical code that should not be interrupted. That means as and when the interrupt has been taken by the processor, and that interrupt has to be disabled. Why? Because if it is not disabled, what happens? This interrupt is once again going to become a hindrance to implement, to execute the highest priority task. Therefore, it has to be suspended for that particular moment. So the number of lines of this code should be minimum and bound under all circumstances. The interrupt service routine program should be very, very small. It should be minimal code. That is why a good RTOS system should have a shortest interrupt latencies. What is latency? The time delays between the execution of the addressing of the interrupt and execution of the task is time latency. Interrupt responses, interrupt recovery times. So just to reduce time here, the RTOS has to be very fast enough. To make it fast enough, the code length of interrupt service routine should be very, very less to get all these advantages. Okay. So therefore, the interrupt, in order to have, that means apart from minimum code length, yeah, the good RTOS should have shortest interrupt latencies, interrupt response time periods, interrupt recovery time periods. So that means all these things are very much essential apart from minimum code. Okay, in the interrupts. Then what are the various examples of interrupt routines that we can think of? Copy peripheral data into buffer. This is what I was talking to you. There is some external memory known as some external peripheral memory. The data has to be copied from that into the buffer. That is transferring data from external memory into the buffer. That is known as the interrupt service routine example. Indicate to other code that data has arrived. That is what serial communication we use. Acknowledge the interrupt, telling the hardware to perform some activity. So longer reaction to interrupt performed outside the interrupt routines causes a process to start or resume running. Causes a process or a task to start or resume running. That means resume running means what? The task is going to get halted if it is not so important to perform at that instant of task. When a high priority is going to come in between, then it will be halted, control goes to the high priority, completes the task, then the task can be resumed by using interrupt service routines. So that means, so these are all the various examples of utilization of the interrupt service routines. Now there is an important operating system known as Wind River system, known as VxWorks development environment. So it is something like an environment, something like, say for example, you wanted to write a code for Java. When you want to write a code for Java, we're going to use a environment to write a code. Say for example, I want to type a document. Then I have to use MS Word environment. So similarly, you wanted to implement RTOS applications. So we have to use some environment, development environment, that is known as VxWorks. Is a premier development and execution environment for complex real-time and embedded applications on a wide variety of target processors. Right. So target processors means what? Somewhere they are going to execute. They are built here, but they are going to execute somewhere. That is called target processors. 3 highly integrated components are included with VxWorks. What are the integrated components that are included with VxWorks? See here, operating system is the one which is important. A high performance scalable real-time operating system. That is what important, which executes on a target processor. OS has to be there. The next, a set of powerful cross development tools. Yeah, this is an important point. Cross compilers is an important concept in the case of the embedded systems. Cross compilers means what? The code which is generated on one OS should get implemented in another OS. That is what called cross compilation. That means the program written in one language has to be understood by other in another language. That is what the basic difference here. So therefore, powerful cross development tools, cross compilers is a very important function, because say for example, we develop a program to be implemented in a rover which is there in the moon. What happens? Now, there we need to use a cross compiler, because the environment that is there in the moon and the software suitable to get implemented for a rover in the moon is different is different by the software which is developed at the ground station. Now, the operating systems are going to be different here at the time of development. Operating systems will be different there in the moon, which is going to have a rover there, which implements our program. So there the OS will be different. Environment is going to be different. So in that process, the code, whatever that we have transmitted to the moon to get implemented, to get configured, has to be cross-compiled, cross-development tool. So this is what the application where we use it real time. So, and a full range of communication software options as Ethernet or serial line for the target connections to the host. So this is what one more thing, that the source computer is connected to one type of serial communication line. Destination is connected to another type of serial communication line. So in that case, also you have to have communication, full range of communication. Software options has to be given. Now the heart of the OS in the real time is going to be what now? The heart of the OS in the wind, the heart of the OS is the wind microkernel. Wind microkernel, the wind river systems, which supports multitasking. Now all the RS functions. What are the RS functions? Multitasking, scheduling, intertask communications, management communications, memory management tasks. All these are the various functions of the RTOS. So in that we discussed about scheduling, we discussed about multitasking, we discussed about intertask communication, intertask management, that is using semaphores, mailboxes, all these things, memory management. All other functionalities are through processes or tasks. So there is no privilege protection between system and application, also support for communication between process on different processes is poor. So that means what it has to provide, that means OS has to provide all these functionalities. Definitely the wind river OS called as microkernel is also going to provide, support us all these functionalities. So this is what the unit number 4, which is normally going to be on the various types of the real-time OS functionalities and its internal functions. Thank you very much for today's session. And next session, what we do is we go with 5th unit. Some part of 5th unit has already been covered in the very beginning chapter. I just wanted to go through that once again, just to have a gist of the unit number 5, because unit number 5 is a theory on the overall part of the embedded systems, like hardware components of embedded system, the basic architecture, the basic block diagram of a system on chip architecture. So all these things we have discussed already in the very beginning session. So I just wanted to recap on that in the next session on the 5th unit, because it's going to be pretty simple, right? Okay, thank you very much for your presence.